finally, this is a question that people ask too about the writing of this book. Like, how'd you do it? What's the process? People are just interested. I learned a lot about my own brain and my own writing process while writing this book. When I first sat down to write, I literally, day one, hour one, said, okay, I'm going to do the gratitude chapter first, because that's what I'm most familiar with. That's what I have the most knowledge and don't have to have research involved in, because I've done so much workshopping with people at all these different stages. So I'm going to write the gratitude journal. So I kid you not when I say it only took about 15 minutes for me to have a thought as I was writing that really belonged in, let's say, the writing with younger children section. And I stupidly thought, go away, I'm writing the gratitude chapter now. And I kept writing the gratitude chapter. 15 minutes later, I'm reading something for information that I need in the gratitude chapter, and I see terrific information for writing with neurodiversity, and I say, stop, I can't look at you right now. I am writing the gratitude journaling section. So, dear viewer, I hope you're still with me. And I wish I could tell you that it only took a day or even an hour for me to figure out what I was doing so wrongly, but it didn't. I struggled for probably about 3 weeks of keeping this rigid plan and feeling like my whole book would fall apart if I didn't write it chapter by chapter. I put constraints on myself and made my view far too limited, right? But then one day, thank goodness, I was wanting to focus on a particular chapter, and I kept bumping into stuff for another chapter, and I finally said, oh my gosh, okay, I'm gonna open up a file and start writing that chapter 2. And so I did. And maybe an hour later, something else happened that belonged in another chapter, and I felt scandalous and like I was doing something wrong, and all of the imposter syndrome came up. But suddenly that part of me won, and I opened up different files, different file names for every chapter heading. And yes, the chapters weren't even the same as they are now. They ended differently, but I opened up a different file for everyone, and as I had a thought, or as I stumbled into research, I just threw it in the bucket that it belonged, right? Sometimes I was embarrassed by this. I am just admitting to you that I felt like, oh my gosh, I don't know what I'm doing. People would say, how's the book going? How much do you have done? And I'd be like, I don't know. Because I was just throwing things in all of these different buckets, and I didn't know what it would all add up to. And then, one day I just had a sense that maybe my buckets were full enough, and I started opening them up like this, scared to death to look at the page count and see how much I had. And lo and behold, I had a lot of stuff in my buckets. And then I did a more chapter by chapter approach. But I'm telling you, the more I wrote, the more I learned. And the more I wrote, I still did keep shifting things. Oops, that belonged in that bucket, not that bucket. Oh, this chapter name belongs this. I didn't really see my book until all of the content was written. It was in wrong places. It was all over the place, but I did not see the book until it was all out. And I think I'm going to remember that lesson and hopefully help other people about it. I've always used a metaphor about you can't build a house if you haven't made the bricks. And I try to tell students that all the time when, again, they want to write first sentence first and last sentence last. Like, nope, just build some bricks. Doesn't matter. Write the scene that is calling you the most. Write the moment that you want to write about. Right? It doesn't matter. You're not going to write the first sentence first and the last sentence last anyway. So, for me, I think that the chapter titles, even though they ended up wrong, even though I modified, they were the scaffolding. And then I needed to make all of those bricks until I could decide how the house actually needed to be built, and have it come together. So that was my experience with writing the book, and I only wish, I had done it even earlier. If I ever do anything like that again, I'm going to be less afraid, I think, to write all of it all at once. It sounded crazy when I would tell people, well, I'm writing it all at once, so I don't know. And really, the reactions I got weren't so great. People were like, what? But I just trusted the process, and it did come together in the end. There were moments during the writing that I couldn't wait for it to be done. And now that it's over, I'm sad, right? But I get to still do stuff like this, and hopefully I'll hear back from you, and there'll be different things that happen and come out of the book. So in many ways, I'm also just really excited for what's next, and I feel like it's also just begun.